And then the final presentation is Sofie Arneberg, who's research librarian at the National Library of Norway, and her specialist subjects are children's literature and book history. And she's going to be talking about mass-produced images of the 19th century and ways of finding them and analysing them. So something very much for Francesca.
Thank you. Yes, I'm here to present what I've called the digital pursuit of mass-produced images of the 19th century. But first I would like to say a few words on the background of this project. I was initially doing a study on this magazine, a picture magazine for children, which is considered to be Norway's first children's magazine. It was only published for 2 years, from 1838 to 1839. It was a very nice magazine, I thought, for the time being, with plenty of illustrations and good text by some of the country's best authors of children's books of the period. And I thought these two things indicated that it should have been a huge success. So it only lasted for 2 years, and I wanted to find out why it was so short-lived. What I did find out was that the editors thought just that it was too expensive to produce. The publishers also claimed that they had difficulties obtaining the illustrations on time, that the postal system was not reliable, and especially not in the winter time. They had several excuses. But I think they also had to cut the number of illustrations. They promised 100 illustrations in each year, but they were cut during the second year. What I also discovered was that some of the readers had complained that the illustrations were being reused. And that is true, because most of the illustrations had already been printed in another magazine from the same publishers, called the Shilling magazine, in addition to children's books, ABCs, and other publications. And you probably recognize these images as coming from the Penny magazine. Scholars who have written about the magazine have not shown much interest in the illustrations, after having stated that they were not locally produced, as there were few or no skilled wood engravers in Norway at the time. The idea of the National was quite persistent in the earliest research on children's literature in Norway, and that might be the reason why little had been written on these illustrations. As we know, the illustrations here were made of stereotypes and bought from England, France, and a few other places, possibly. And as one must hope that more publishers than these two Norwegians bought and printed these illustrations, I am quite certain that they have been seen by a great number of people across the continents, both children and adults. More knowledge of their whereabouts could give us new perspectives on the text as well, because I think that these illustrations must have had some influence on the literature produced in the countries where they were shown, as I have seen examples of text that were written to fit the illustrations rather than the other way around. So abandoning the more familiar approach to children's literature as interactions between words and images, I omitted the text and isolated the images, as you can see here. These magazines were already digitized, so what had to be done was to write a script that identified and isolated all the images. That is a method that might be similar to what I've seen has been done here in the British Library. That's called the mechanical curator. Yes. And later I've learned that the method used to extract these images, that it does not necessarily find images, rather it identifies images as the absence of text. And that is also something to look further into. So what we see here is half of the images that are found in a magazine. And with an overview like this, some patterns start to emerge. it is easier to classify them, to see the style or motive, and which images belong together. And there are, for instance, many dogs in this magazine, but very few cats and very few children, being a children's magazine. So the images were tested in various reverse image search engines. TinEye was probably the program that gave the best results, or that I had some success using. Many of the performed searches returned hits. Still, few of them came from the digital collections that I expected them to come from, where I knew that these images should have been found. Meanwhile, many of the results led to interesting discoveries, as they pointed to unexpected or unknown sources, or revealed images that were similar rather than identical. And here's, let's see, some results I found there. I mentioned that the editors had promised a certain number of illustrations, and these two, the top images from the Penny magazine, and these two were printed in the Norwegian magazine. And I don't know the explanation to this, but they are at least fulfilled. These are printed as two images. And my final image is this one. There's a nice example of dissemination across borders, as was the subject of my study. As you can see, the captions are in Norwegian and means milking of the reindeer. With the TinEye program, however, I found the image in the Art Union scrapbooks, as it is cited here. And what we learned is that the reindeer were brought to England and drawn there, the live specimen, while the background was drawn after lithographs by the English baronet Arthur the Brook, who traveled in Scandinavia in the 1820s. That would be down to the right there. So the animals and background were reunited as wood carvings or wood etchings rather, in England, engravements, and then produced as stereotypes before they were brought back to the young readers of Norway. These readers, most of them had probably not seen neither the Brooks book or reindeer. Digitization opens up new possibilities for digital research, also for images. And when the images are no longer considered the absence of text by these digital tools, I think we can do very interesting things with this. This that I have demonstrated here is a very small study, but it would be very interesting to apply to a larger material. Thank you.